Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Phantom Encounter. Thank you ever so much for joining us this evening for this podcast that you will be listening to on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope, perhaps also Twitter. If you're listening in from Twitter, please drop us a tweet and let us know if you're there. I'm joined this evening by my co-host, Julie.
Good evening. How are you all? It's nice to be back on the airwaves again.
Very much so, yes, definitely. Drop us a comment if you are listening. If you're listening in live, that would be epic. Please let us know whereabouts in the world you're from, if this is your first time listening to us, or if you are a seasoned #boocrew veteran. Again, if you type in any of your comments, #boocrew, all one word, we will actually be able to pick up your comments, even if you haven't yet found our page. We regularly search all of our hashtags associated with Phantom Encounter. So if you fancy coming along for the #boocrew ride, then yeah, leave us a comment.
Yes, indeed.
But tonight, guys, we are coming to you to talk about quite a serious topic, something that I don't think enough people have conversations about, do they, Julie?
No, they don't.
And I think it's the absolute first steps that people should be learning, genuinely understanding, and utilising, and that is psychic self-defence. Now, I'm sure some of you might have heard this term being bounded around, or maybe you haven't. Maybe you're really new to this, and both of those are okay. We've got a number of different things to discuss tonight, and to not only show you some of the signs and symptoms of when you are under psychic attack, but also the solutions to these problems, and even some preventative measures as well that could help you. So today, what we want to do initially is to talk about we have boiled this down into 4 separate categories. Julie, can you tell us what the categories are?
The first category is passive physical. The second is deliberate physical. The third is spiritual deliberate, and the fourth is entity attachment.
Thanks ever so much, Julie. So obviously, I'm sure some of you might be already familiar with these, but if you're not, don't worry. We're gonna go in depth with them as we move through. So, area 1, when we're talking about passive physical psychic attack, this is, I guess, one of the best terms that I can use that you might well have heard of before is the term empath. Raise your hands, whoever in the room would consider them an empath, somebody that picks up on the energies of other people, beings, so like animals or spirits that are around them. You might even be empathic if you were to go into a very old historic building and pick up on the energy of what used to be there. It could have been a maid doing the same job over and over again, or it could have been King Henry VIII, who knows. But we're talking about this non-direct, passive attachment of energy. And this can come as an attack to somebody who isn't well versed in their own self-care. The second area that we have called the deliberate physical. So this is when, for example, you've had an argument with somebody, they've decided they want you out of their lives and they're going to cause you no end of trouble. That is somebody that is deliberately trying to cause you harm. We also call this, because we've split this down into 2 further sections, we call area 2 the deliberate physical, but of the Muggle world.
And where does that come from?
But the area 3 is the second half of this, and we are calling it the spiritual deliberate. So this is a person, much like yourselves, that is of a spiritual path and perhaps has some magical knowledge and ability, and they are attempting to use that against you. make your life tricky, or plot your downfall. It depends how big the fisticuffs has become. And area 4, although yes, it is within the psychic attack realm, entity attachment, as you'll have heard, we have definitely discussed on the channel before about things like demonic possession.
Yes, we have.
Entity possession, and it might seem quite far away, but I do think it's very much worth us talking about it tonight.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to talk about some of the signs or the symptoms, and give a little sort of brief explanation as to how they might manifest in your life, in regards to, in particular, well, yes, all of them, but we want to focus on the first 3 areas to begin with. So Julie, can you just go ahead and let us know some of the signs and the symptoms that these guys can be looking out for in their everyday lives?
Well, I'm sure most of us have been walking down the street and felt a person's aura, that felt that something is wrong with that person.
Mm-hmm.
They can be extremely angry, and somehow that draws energy from you that leaves you feeling fatigued, exhausted.
Yeah. Sometimes it can have really, really extreme effects where you could be walking down the street, like you say, and you just pass somebody, and because you pick up on those energies, be it consciously or subconsciously, and for example, you go back to work after that and you shout at the first customer that comes in, or you have an argument with a boss or a colleague, and it can really impact you, and the fatigue and exhaustion, like Julie was saying, can be quite overwhelming to those that don't know how to protect themselves. But don't worry, later on we will be telling you how you can not only correct these problems, but you can actually prevent these problems. Okay, hit us with the next one, Julie.
Right, confusion.
Oh crikey, yes.
You can be so tired that you don't think with clarity
Sure.
and not realise where it's come from.
Yeah. Some people talk about when they have arguments, especially with close family members or loved ones and what have you, and they argue, and then things become so muddled within their own minds because they're so clouded by the emotions and feelings of everybody involved.
They didn't want to get to that point. They didn't want that argument to get to that level. How are they going to turn it around? How are they going to sort this out? And they feel guilty themselves for something that they didn't necessarily start, but have been pulled into.
Yeah. Okay. And what's the next one?
Lack of clarity and thought in speech.
Yep.
It can get you such a muddled state that you aren't thinking straight. You do answer back with something that maybe you didn't really mean, but you're that angry, that confused that you say something without thinking about it.
Yeah, sure. There can also be a certain element of, I don't know if anybody else has ever had it historically, but brain fog that can make you speak in ways that you wouldn't necessarily normally. Okay, on to the next.
Sudden mood changes.
Ain't that the truth? How many times have you sat in a room with a person and 1 minute they're laughing, they're joking, they're happy and they're smiley, the next minute, oh boy, call centres are a really good example of this. People get off a call, and because somebody else has had a bad day, they've been shouting at the person, they got off the phone, and then it's just that butterfly effect, it's that chain reaction, isn't it?
Yes.
But okay, what's the next?
Irritability.
Yeah, again, I think obviously goes with the mood changes, definitely.
Yes,
but irritability is a sign that I think we can all see and understand within ourselves and each other, and it can again seemingly come out of nowhere.
And of course, all of these added together will give you sleep deprivation.
Oh yeah, and insomnia.
Insomnia.
Yeah, don't we all know that old cookie?
Yeah, because your mind is so
frazzled,
twisted, frazzled. It doesn't know what to do, what to think, how to deal with these situations. How have I got into this? This isn't me. This isn't how I would normally think.
Yeah, just gets you all befuddled.
And you can't relax, you can't sleep, you can't think straight.
Yeah, and sleep deprivation brings all of its own issues, as I'm sure most of you listeners will have had some experience of. A couple of bad nights of sleep, it really knocks you out.
Well, by the third night, you've gone back to bed and think, I can't sleep.
Yes, where
and
am I?
You've convinced yourself you can't sleep.
What universe are we in? Okay, what's next?
So then you go to self-neglect.
Yes, that tends to be where it ends up. Obviously, this is in not necessarily a worst case scenario, but it's when you're a few steps down the line. If people aren't protecting themselves emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, it can end in this cycle of self-neglect, because the negative talk that is coming through with all of it can be so extremely damaging to the individual. It ends up in self-neglect, and that leads us on to the next three that sort of come together. We've got depression, anxiety, and then most importantly, guys, paranoia. These, when under attack, is just it doesn't matter whether it's passive or whether it's deliberate or whether it's a spiritual person doing it to you. Especially the anxiety and paranoia causing the depression, obviously, but the combination of the trio can be quite crippling. I mean, any of them just as they stand alone can be very debilitating in a person's everyday life. But when you get the three of those, so if you put that into a scenario where somebody who has a magical ability is trying to cause those three problems for you, I mean, you're already going to get the exhaustion because you're trying to think straight because of the confusion of the lack of clarity. Then all of a sudden the irritability and the mood changes come in, the sleep deprivation, and then the self-neglect. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, which I think is really, really tragic when it could be so easily averted.
Yes.
So easily averted.
Just with a few simple steps.
Exactly, and this is what we want to talk to you guys about today. Okay, so some of the other signs and manifestations are a loss of social circle, the person isolating themselves away, which obviously runs hand in hand with low confidence and self-esteem. Again, if somebody is working against you, they might attack your social circle, especially if you appear to be on, say, like the fringes of a group, but you're trying to maintain it, you're trying to keep up with it, but that can be, that rug can be pulled out from under your feet. Also, sickness and ill health, again, tends to run in line with self-neglect. But an interesting one as well, and we had quite a chat about this when we were initially compiling this list for you guys. We were talking about that feeling of dread before, during and after having an encounter with that person, be it passively, be it the muggle deliberate, or be it the spiritual person deliberate. The sense of dread when encountering that individual or that entity can be completely consuming.
Yes, it can.
I mean, we talk about intuition in the spiritual path so frequently, but that intuitional feeling of this isn't right, this person isn't right, the situation isn't right, what they're doing doesn't feel right. It's like when you feel the difference between how somebody is, say, presenting themselves, be it their physical clothing, their hair, and what have you, and their self-speech, so what they're telling you they are. So if you get somebody that says they're a light worker, but everything about them, their demeanour, their dress, their tone of their speech, stop listening to what they're saying and start looking at what's actually being presented to you. So yeah, that feeling of dread, trust that intuition, trust that gut instinct. But yeah, so those are some of the signs that there is some form of problem that is going on.